Okay, welcome to the 2023 Northampton School District Deliberative Session. This meeting is now officially open. Could I ask the School Board Vice Chair, Kate Belanger, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to start this evening by thanking both Cynthia Dixon and Mary Beth Driscoll for their years of service to NHS, and we wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, so for some introductions, our supervisors of the checklist today are Jane Morse, Kevin Murphy, and Joanne Knox. If you have not checked in yet, you want to go back to the back of the room and get your voter card. If you come up to speak, I'll ask that you state your name and show us your card to see that you're a registered voter. School District Clerk is Susan Buchanan. For the school board tonight, we have Vice Chair Caitlin Belanger, Lisa Gagalis, Michael Gendra, Marianne Von Jess. Principal is Susan Snyder, Assistant Principal Dina Jensen. We also have Curriculum Coordinator Rebecca Carlson, Superintendent Meredith Nato, Business Administrator Matt Ferrara, and our legal counsel is Robert Casassa. Rick Stanton is Chair of the Budget Committee. Members tonight are Sean Dion, George Chauncey, Frank Ferraro, James Sanudo, and Andrew Rauchi is apparently on his way. I'm your moderator, Bobby Burns.
We made it.
Oh, we made it. Oh, you're here. Thanks. Thanks to Stu Spooner and company for setting up the room, and John Savastano and Troy Claderis for doing our broadcasting tonight. The school deliberative session is our opportunity to meet as a legislative body. This is a gathering of all registered voters who wish to participate. This is not a school board meeting, nor is it a budget committee meeting, though both the school board and the budget committee are here tonight, and they may have meetings open at the same time. But they are participating as registered voters, just as you and I are. This is your meeting. As such, if you don't understand something or you need clarification, just ask. At today's deliberative session, we deliberate and amend articles. Actual voting on the warrant by casting official ballots will be held on Tuesday, March 14th, here at the school from 8 a.m. to 7. It will be in the gym, though. Accordingly, we may amend or modify, but not change the subject matter of any article. Discussion will be limited to what can be done at this meeting tonight. We will not vote to put articles on the warrant. All articles, either as is or as amended, will be on the official ballot. Each article will be projected on screen. Articles will be moved to the floor and seconded. I will then recognize someone, who will be Matt, to speak and give us a brief explanation of each article. Then others will be allowed to speak. Some basic rules. This is a meeting of registered voters. Others may attend, but non-voters will generally not be allowed to speak. School administrators, even though they aren't registered voters, will be permitted to speak for purposes of providing information and clarification. Please come up to the microphone to speak. If you can't come to the microphone, let us know, we'll bring it to you. Please show your voter card, state your full name for the minutes. Please address all comments to me. Only one person has the floor at a time. Discussion between parties is not allowed. Once you have asked your question or made your comment, I ask that you yield to the next person speaking. If you are proposing amendment, I may ask for it in writing to ensure that we record it properly. We will discuss only one amendment at a time. This is simply to ensure that we keep everything straight. Please keep in mind that every individual in this room wants what is best for the school. Their ideas may just differ from yours. All those wishing to speak will be allowed to speak before any speaker has a second chance. Any article or amendment to an article can be reconsidered at any time unless a vote is taken to restrict reconsideration. Once reconsideration is restricted, the article cannot be reopened. We have only one open position this year. It's one 3-year term for school board, and Wendy Wallace is running for that term. Okay, can I have a motion to move Article 1 to the floor?
I'll move to open the article for discussion.
Second?
I'll second.
Matt?
Thank you. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I want to take a moment to thank the Budget Committee and the school board for the hard work in developing and bringing forth the proposed operating budget, as well as the associated warrant articles. The school board, as the governing board for the Northampton School, is responsible for the policy and developing a budget that aligns with the mission and the vision of our school, and to achieve that mission in providing for the proper learning experience for our students. And the school board, this budget committee, as the is responsible for the fiscal oversight of the budget and the warrant articles, to ensure that we are bringing forth warrant articles that are fiscally responsible, while also meeting those goals that the school board has laid out. So thank you both. There's a great deal of work that goes into budget development, a lot of data to parse, a lot of information to go through, so I do appreciate all the hard work that both the school board and budget committee put into this. So when developing a budget, like I said, we allocate resources and we budget with the perspective that we want to reflect our school values in the budget, and we allocate resources that align with those school goals, mission, and vision, which is to develop caring, kind, and curious students by promoting the following 21st century goals, and that's communication, critical thinking, and problem solving, empathy, integrity, responsibility, and a learner's mindset and perseverance. So with that in mind, we did identify a number of goals that do align with our school improvement plan. And that includes the long-term development of high-quality curriculum and highly effective instructional and assessment practices at all of our grade levels. And that includes a great deal of work in our competency-based education plan, in aligning our QPAs and our rubrics across all of the SAU in order to prepare our students to graduate into Winnacunnet High School or alternative private high schools. Additionally, we are looking to support a multi-tiered system of support for students, and that allows us to both challenge our advanced students while also providing interventions for our struggling students. We support the enhancement of school culture and climate through increased communication efforts and strategies. And that's really been a focus, I'd say, over the last 3 to 4 years, where we've really emphasized how can we improve as a school community, create collegiality both at the faculty level, but also have that resonate with our students and provide for that learning environment that we want to promote. Additionally, we are looking to commit to providing high-quality special education services and resources. So special education is one of those areas where we have seen some significant increases in costs. This has been trending over the last 20, 30 years, where we have seen increases in special education expenditures that really hasn't had an outsized impact on all school budgets, and that's nationwide as well as here at the local level. While it's really been a great service to our students as we've better understood the needs of our students and providing services that can meet those needs, it's also come at an expense. And when we're looking at abiding by federal and state law, that really is a large expense and can, and is actually a unfunded mandate from the federal government with the IDEA Act, where there was a promise of 40% funding for special education, and in reality, states are only receiving 15% of that funding. So that's a $23 billion shortfall for states across the country. It's $92 million shortfall in New Hampshire, and that affects us here at Northampton. It actually affects us disproportionately because of our funding mechanism. We as a state fund our public education locally through property taxes. So we bear that brunt, and we see that on our property tax bills every year with that increased cost with special education and lack of federal or state funding for special education. And then finally, we intend to identify additional resources and staff to enable us to meet our goals. So alongside those goals, we've set some priorities, and that includes maintaining stable staffing patterns for classrooms with appropriate adjustments for enrollment. So as you're aware, we have seen declining enrollment at Northampton, and we have had to adjust our staffing accordingly. On an annual basis, we do conduct staffing analysis, not only for our teacher population, but also our other departments, whether it's our facilities staff, food service, administration, and our administrative assistants. And we have made some significant cuts based on those enrollments declining over the last few years. Additionally, we're looking to increase the capacity of our special education department by investing in specialized staff and resources, and that's in order to meet specific student need, and that's per IEPs, individualized education plans, that are where we are required to provide those services by law. We are looking to continue long-term planning for technology needs and replacement cycles for equipment with an emphasis on uniform technology setup in each classroom for interactive instruction. So we do have a technology plan in place where it does outline replacement cycles and investments in technology. This is a mechanism to provide the proper technology necessary for instruction and to support our curriculum, but it also provides us the ability to smooth out fluctuations with budgeting for technology rather than have a one-year large investment where it disproportionately affects the budget. We try to plan long-term and spread out those costs so it is not a large effect on the taxpayer. And then we're always looking to utilize grant funding and our expendable trust resources wherever it is possible in order to supplement the operating budget. And we're always looking at creative ways to minimize what we're asking for in tax monies, whether that's our health insurance expendable trust, where it offers us the ability to under budget our health insurance premiums and hedge against the GMR versus the actual rate, or utilize our building maintenance expendable trust to address some facilities issues rather than putting out warrant articles for capital improvement projects. We do have a capital improvement plan. That's a 5-year CIP. So we utilize those trust resources to minimize those raise and appropriation warrant articles. So I'd mentioned enrollment. I just want to briefly touch upon enrollment at Northampton. So as you'll see, we are anticipating a slight decrease from our current level of 304 students to 296 students next year. And again, that is a key metric and data point that we look at when we are planning both short-term and long-term from a budgeting perspective. It can have a real effect on not only staffing levels, but also many of our discretionary supplies, materials, books, accounts, where we can look to reduce based on those reductions. Now, on the flip side, if we had an increase in enrollment, we would look at potentially increasing those accounts. But currently, we've been in a declining enrollment trend, so we have made those reductions accordingly. And to that point, I just want to dig deeper, a little deeper into that, how that enrollment decline affects our staffing at the classroom level. So this is an example of how we take a look at every individual class, the number of teachers that are appropriate to staff those class sizes, and then we align that with our school board policy, or we align the staffing to meet the school board policy on classroom sizes. So for fiscal year '24, we are proposing an operating budget of $9,773,661. That does reflect an increase of 0.86%, which is $83,020 over the current FY23 budget. So this proposed budget reflects a 0.87% increase, or $84,151 compared to the default budget. The default budget is $9,689,510, and that's important to note because when this warrant article is seen on the ballot for voters to weigh in on, they will see the proposed operating budget number as well as the default budget. So if the proposed operating budget fails, we will work with the default budget. So the school board would be given that 9.689 number, and they would have to essentially redevelop the proposed budget based on that new bottom line number. The default budget is the prior year's budget plus or minus any contractual obligations or legally mandated items, and then reduced by any one-time expenditures or reductions in personnel. So when we're looking at the budget, there's always significant budget drivers that affect how we're budgeting for the year. So in this case, what we're seeing in this current fiscal year, FY23, and what we are foreseeing in next fiscal year, 24, is some pretty significant cost escalation when it comes to many of our expenditures at the school. So we've all seen price inflation at home. We're all affected by the increase in costs for groceries, for heating fuels to heat our homes. All those living expenses have increased, and the school is not immune to that. And we've seen some significant increases in supplies, books, equipment, food service, software, repair and maintenance, technology hardware, contracted services, furniture, and the list goes on. So when you're looking at the budget on a line-by-line basis at many of these accounts, you may see a reduction or no change in the account. However, that doesn't mean that the costs aren't going up. On a unit basis, we have a great deal of price increases across the board in all of these accounts. However, like I said earlier, we took great care to look at our enrollment, what our needs are, and we reduced many of those accounts based on that. So even if there's a decrease, that doesn't mean that our costs aren't increasing for that particular account. And I do want to note that when we are budgeting, we're looking at it as a zero-based budget process. So I want to, it's a little delayed, so sorry Susan and Dina and Becca, but they really do a fantastic job in working with our individual departments to determine what the needs are at each individual department level. We don't take last year's budget and then just roll it into the next budget. We look at, hey, what curriculum are we looking to bring forth for grades 1 through 3? What are we looking to accomplish? How does it align with those school improvement plans? It's really a needs-based approach from the bottom up. So that's how we come up with these numbers on an account-by-account basis. I do want to call out electricity and heating fuels. that falls under the price inflation bucket. However, there's really been a dramatic shift in energy markets where those two accounts, we're seeing a very large spike that is reflected in the budget. Now, we do a collaborative energy contract across the SAU, so we do achieve great quantities of scale when it comes to so it's natural gas here at Northampton, as well as electricity. I mean, our electricity rate is currently 6 cents a kilowatt, which is a really incredible rate right now. However, we know that our contract ends December of '23, and that rate is going to increase. Even if it's not at the residential rates that you may all see, it's going to be a relative increase where we're going to see a big impact. We do take advantage of dips in the market, so we do hedge a little bit and do purchase some short-term contracts if we see a drop in natural gas. However, it doesn't matter what strategy we take, we're seeing an increase. Additionally, we are proposing the replacement of the gymnasium divider. That I would encourage you all to go down to the gymnasium and try to move it. It's almost impossible. That really does need to be replaced. Also, we are proposing the addition of ceiling fans in the cafeteria. So here, if anyone's been here in a hot day, you will understand the need for ceiling fans in the cafeteria. It's actually a little toasty right now, but maybe that's just me. Just kidding.
Should have been here on Saturday.
Yeah, we hiked up the heat just to really drive home the point of the need for ceiling fans. Additionally, embedded in this operating budget, we do have our non-union staff salary cost of living adjustment. And we benchmark that to the documented rate of inflation. We have 3 classifications of employees here at Northampton. We have our teachers union that fall under a collective bargaining agreement, which is going to be another warrant article that you will see later on this evening. Then we have our CESPA CBA, that's for our paraprofessionals, our educational associates. I'll take the moment to plug for next year. We have a CBA coming up next year for those paraprofessionals, and they are a highly valued part of the team that we absolutely need to address. They are severely underpaid. We need to do something about that employee classification. This isn't the time or place, but I just want to throw it out there because our EAs are incredibly valuable, and we need to address that next year in that CBA. And then we have our non-union employees. So that's our administrators, our administrative assistants, our technology staff, our food service staff, and our facilities staff. And like I said, every year we benchmark that to the documented rate of inflation. That is 7% for this period of time. So that has also increased the budget. We have an increase in special education tuition costs, and that's for out-of-district placements. And again, that's based on students that require that specialized instruction or medical needs, or there might be a court placement. There's various reasons that there could be a student that needs to be placed out of district per their IEP. Additionally, we are seeing some savings in health insurance. So I had alluded to the health insurance expendable trust, and that is an area that we are taking advantage of this year as well. We are under budgeting our health insurance account. We have the healthcare expendable trust to safeguard us against fluctuations in health insurance premiums. As you know, we're budgeting now, but we're going to have different employees next year. We're going to have employees that get married and they go on to a 2-person plan, or have children and go on to a family plan. There's high volatility there, just like our special education expendable trust, and that safeguards us. But an added benefit is we have that expendable trust available funds where we can take a look at our health insurance premiums history. So in October of every year, we receive our guaranteed maximum rate for health insurance. It's based on a trailing 18-month claims history. So that's for that snapshot in time. So our health insurer, Health Trust, guarantees that our health insurance premium won't be higher than set amounts. However, we won't receive our actual health insurance premiums until 6 months later in March. So what we do is we look at previous history and see what that delta is between October and March, and then that offers us the ability to hedge a little bit and under budget health insurance in that area. So that's an added benefit as well. If it ends up coming in at that GMR, which sometimes it does, and we go over budget in health insurance and we can't absorb that into the budget, we have that trust that we can tap into to safeguard us. And then finally, we are seeing a pretty significant reduction in our retirement system. So the New Hampshire retirement system reduced the employer contribution percentage by about 3%, so we are saving there. I just want to note the cost of living adjustment for our non-union employees. I talked a little bit about that, but I just want to further elaborate on how we benchmark that cost of living adjustment. It isn't just, we don't just throw a dart at the dartboard. We look at the July to July timeframe for our geographic region. We use the Consumer Price Index, so CPI-U for the Portsmouth region. And so in this case, it's July of 2021 to July of 2022, that 12-month period. And we utilize that for our cost of living adjustment. So, so that way we're a year late. Actually, we're almost 2 years late because this is for FY24, and we're looking at the 21 to 22 time period. However, over time, that evens out and it gives an accurate representation of the actual cost of living increases that our employees are facing. So for example, 2 years ago, it was 0.8%. So it will, over time, the intent is to match with the cost of living changes or inflation. And just to put it in perspective, I did include the rate of inflation for that same time period nationally. So we're actually a little lower in this area, hard to believe. But also Social Security for 2023, that cost of living adjustment is 8.7%. So moving on to the real meat of the budget, I'm going to go department by department and detail the individual budget by department, the increase or decrease, and then the reason for that variation. So general education is budgeted at $2,430,040. That represents a decrease of $30,172 or 1.23%. And that reflects staffing changes that resulted in the hiring of new staff at lower cost. So when we have teachers retire, they are typically more experienced and they're higher up on the salary schedule. And then when we look to hire, oftentimes there are less experienced teachers or other staff members who are on salary schedules. So it's always our ideal situation where we can find the most qualified person who may have less experience at a lower cost. And that's the case, or that has been the case recently. I also want to note that this is artificially lower, this whole account, because this is where all of our teachers' salaries are included, and we have a CBA, that's a separate warrant article, that includes all the teachers' cost of living adjustments, steps, so that would normally be included in this general education department. However, it's a separate warrant article. Should the CBA warrant article pass, it will roll into this department. Additionally, Northampton's allocation of ESOL services was reduced. So that's a contracted service actually a really great initiative at the SAU level where we hired an ESOL teacher SAU-wide that provides services for multiple districts. So that's Northampton, Hampton Falls, Winnicott, and Southampton. That way, we can hire a full-time employee where otherwise a district like Northampton would have no justification for hiring a full-time ESOL teacher. It would really be a very small part-time position. So we're able to hire a higher quality teacher that can ostensibly provide better service to our students, but also share that cost across multiple districts. I know in year one, we recognized a savings of 30% in ESOL costs, and we are continuing to recognize savings, and that's reflected this year. Now that allocation is based on students that are being served in each district. So if Northampton's ESOL need were to increase, that allocation relative to the other districts, that allocation would increase. In this case, there was a decrease because there was decreased student need. Additionally, we did have reductions in our books, print media, and equipment account. That does not mean that books, print media, and equipment have decreased in price. Again, that's based on our reductions in some of those discretionary accounts where we've seen lower enrollment, lower need. So those were offset by increases, again, due to inflation in our supplies, rental lease equipment, and tutors account. So that brings us over to special education, which is budgeted at $1,842,616. That's an increase of $44,103 or 2.45%. So I had mentioned earlier that one of the significant budget drivers was tuition for out-of-district placements. That's included in this account. That represents an increase of $45,662, which is actually more than the total increase in special education of $44,103. So I'll also note that multiple individual accounts within special education are kind of artificially lower, either lower or higher. This isn't necessarily a change in the services or the cost, but a shift in funding source. So you don't see it up here in this PowerPoint, but if you look in the detail of the budget, some accounts saw increases, some saw decreases, because we moved some of our costs from our IDEA grant, which I referenced earlier, that we don't get nearly enough, or not as much as we should. We moved some of those expenditures from IDEA into the operating budget, and then some of those operating budget expenditures into IDEA. Now, the reason for that is because only certain expenditures are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. So we had some services that were not eligible, but we could have been getting reimbursed via Medicaid. Now you're not eligible to have Medicaid reimbursement out of IDEA because they're both federal funds, so you'd be double dipping essentially. So we strategically moved those around to maximize our reimbursement for Medicaid. So moving on, our student activities account is budgeted at $128,891. That's a decrease of $8,304 or 6.05%. So that really represents reverting to normal expenditure levels. This is after a one-time investment in our outdoor ropes course for repairs and design this year. So that's pretty exciting because that is actually being done this spring. You may be aware, but there was some tree harvesting that needed to be done behind the school that has finally been completed after a few years delay. Now that provided for some cleanup. It provided for the health of the forest, but it also provided for some safety concerns with our ropes course. We had to do some, I don't know the specifics of the trees, but we had to remove some trees to allow for the ropes course. I won't pretend like I know the details about it, but we needed to remove some trees to do the ropes course. But that's exciting for the spring to get that up and running. And while we're talking about the forest, I just want to set expectations that it does look dramatically different than in years past. So for anyone that enjoys those trails, it looks and feels different. It can be jarring. However, this is something that Northampton has done approximately every 20 years for the health of the forest. It's been done, I think, twice since the 80s before this iteration. And that has been part of the normal operating procedures. So moving on to guidance, we are budgeting $82,732, which is a decrease of $7,401 or 8.21%. And that reflects a reduction in guidance due to staffing change. So again, when we have a vacancy and we hire a new employee, we oftentimes are able to achieve a savings on that new employee. I'll also note in many of these, there are some of these accounts like guidance and the next account health, where those employees fall under the CBA, so that any cost of living adjustment or step is not reflected in these accounts. So speaking of health, that is our school nurse, which is budgeted at $80,380, or an increase of $2,170, or 2.77%. So that increase reflects additional costs and supplies. We've seen some pretty significant cost increases for some of our our AED, EpiPen, those type of nursing supplies, general supplies. Also, in the past, we've had great difficulty finding a nurse substitute. So we have previously under budgeted for that line item because we knew we couldn't get a sub. However, since then, we have been able to find subs at a better rate, so we have budgeted accordingly. So speech services is budgeted at $132,414, which is an increase of $7,537, or 6.04%. So this is on the flip side. Occasionally we'll have a vacancy and hire someone at a higher rate of pay, and that is what occurred in this case. Our improvement of instruction budget is $157,995. That's an increase of $8,794, or 5.89%. And that reflects staff salary cost of living adjustments, steps, leadership council stipends that were previously grant funded that transitioned back to the operating budget. And those increases were offset by some reductions in our college tuition reimbursement, as well as CESPA professional development costs. So when we talk about college tuition reimbursement, those are, that tuition reimbursement is guaranteed under the collective bargaining agreement for our teachers. However, we don't budget for the maximum potential liability if every teacher were to take a course, because we know that not all our teachers are going to opt in for this benefit. So what we do is we ask our teachers to submit plans for their college plans for whether they're trying to get a degree, a master's degree, a CAGS, or certification, or just are interested in a particular course that may help with their instructional practice. So we take those plans, we look at, this also falls under administrators that may take college tuition, and then we budget accordingly. So our educational media budget is $133,675. That's an increase of $916 or 0.69%. So this is essentially level funded with a slight increase as a result of inflation. So technology, we talked about technology earlier today and our technology plan. So this does align with our board-approved technology plan, which is budgeted at $321,635. That's an increase of $5,629 or 1.78%. So that reflects, as I'd mentioned earlier, our laptop replacement cycles. We have a one-to-one device plan, as well as normal technology replacement cycles. Our Board of Education budget is $30,979, which is a decrease of $11,208 or 26.57%. So that is due to our school board members waiving their school board stipend, as well as a reduction in the legal account based upon actual expenditure history. I will note, however, a legal account is one of those accounts, much like snow removal, where it can be highly volatile and dependent upon what could potentially occur in a given school year. So that's an account that we look at like a 3-year average, but it's anyone's guess what we'll spend in legal fees. Ask Bob Casas, our legal counsel. He knows. Moving on. So SAU services is budgeted at $285,301, which is a decrease of $2,241 or 0.78%. This represents Northampton's allocation of the central office, the SAU, so the Office of the Superintendent, the business office, human resources, accounts payable, payroll, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, as well as our database administrator who administers PowerSchool or supports PowerSchool across all of our districts. This SAU model, as I think you're probably all aware of, is intended to create efficiencies across multiple districts. So in this case, we have, obviously, Northampton is shared alongside Hampton Falls, Winnicott, Southampton, and Seabrook. And we take great care to try to identify areas where we can share resources. I had mentioned the ESOL earlier. We have shared agreements, energy contracts where we have negotiated rates SAU-wide. We have a shared copier printer lease program that saved us about 25% across the SAU. There's a lot of software where we can share across all of our districts, and this is really a great model in order to minimize the cost impact on any individual school district, while also providing services that can align many of our, particularly on the curriculum side, many of our curriculum initiatives across our K-8 schools in order to prepare our students for Winnicott. So I had mentioned our competency-based education initiative. We have conducted program reviews. We started with our math program, and we're going to move into world language. But really, the intent is to provide some consistency and alignment across standards for all of our students so they can enter Winnicott on relatively equal footing, while also understanding that each of our districts are unique. We have, Northampton has its own culture, its own climate, its own individuality, and may want to do things differently. It's not necessarily that we all do things the same way. We're looking at the end result and how our students are prepared for Winnicott, for that next step, or for private school. So that's That's really the intent of the SAU model, while also so providing those shared costs, shared resources, while also encouraging individuality and autonomy. So our school administration budget is $320,694. That's an increase of $19,593, or 6.51%. So that increase is due to staff cost of living adjustments, step increases, rental lease equipment costs, and those increases were offset by some slight decreases in our workshop seminars accounts, telephones, postage, and dues and fees accounts. So moving on to buildings, our budget is $598,706, which is an increase of $59,602. That's an 11.04% increase. So I'll note that this buildings account or budget or department was disproportionately affected by some of these inflationary factors in the current economic environment. I had mentioned earlier the energy market, so we're seeing big increases in electricity and heating fuels. Further, this account includes that replacement of the gymnasium divider as well as the ceiling fans in the cafeteria. We have staff cost of living adjustments, but those accounts such as supplies, cleaners, contracted work, and materials, all of those accounts were really affected by cost escalation. Additionally, we really try to work cooperatively with the town of Northampton because we really see it as a partnership. Mike Tully, the town administrator, as well as the select board, has really been great partners in looking at where we can work together, share resources. And one instance of this is we are proposing the purchase of tractor forks and a fields groomer. And that fields groomer is a cooperative purchase with the town of Northampton. That's an area where both the town and the school can really benefit from that machinery to perform field work and maintenance. And with that constant communication with the town, we determined that was a common need, and we worked together to propose this shared purchase for next year. So our grounds budget is $44,945. That's a decrease of $395, or 0.87%, and that reflects some anticipated grounds repair savings. That's directly related to that groomer because previously we had to outsource those costs. However, we do anticipate a slight increase in snow removal costs. Our vehicles budget is $901. That's a decrease of $12,369, or 93.21%. And that reflects the end of our truck lease purchase payment. I'll note, I talked about the default budget earlier this evening. So this is a good example of where that falls off the default budget because that was a one-time expenditure. Same thing with the ropes course. That ropes course that we did this year is taken out off the default budget for next year. Our transportation budget is $638,748. That's an increase of $26,919, or 4.4%. That's primarily due to special education transportation. And again, that's based on student need for both in-district as well as out-of-district transportation. The remainder of the increase reflects our contract with First Students and to supply our general education, athletic, field trip, and other transportation services. I'll note this is next year will be the 5th year of a 5-year contract, so we will need to go out to bid for a new transportation contract. That will likely occur in the summer time frame. That is a difficult market, student transportation. There's it's a very difficult labor market to find school bus drivers. Our first student, I guess depot was not unionized. They have recently unionized, so that's going to increase costs. The cost to hire bus drivers in general has increased just because it's such a difficult position to fill. We have seen other school districts enter into contracts with school transport or for student transportation at a much higher rate in the last year or two. So I do anticipate FY25, we will see an increase. There's very little competition for student transportation. There's essentially two providers for student and STA. However, we will attempt to solicit anyone who's willing to provide student transportation in our area. There are some other companies out there that may want to enter into this market, so we will pursue those avenues as well. So our debt service is budgeted at $133,478. That's a decrease of $1,821 or 1.35%. That reflects the principal and interest payment on the bond issue for the building project. That last payment is scheduled for August of 23. I think that's actually 24. That's a typo. No, August of 23. My apologies. That's an exciting one, because that means that we will not, I get excited about, things that you probably aren't all that excited about, but you should be. As taxpayers, this is exciting because that means that this will fall off our budget. So that not only falls off our proposed FY25 budget, but it also falls off the default budget. So, because again, that's debt service is included in the default until that last payment is paid off, and then that's considered a one-time expenditure. So both default and proposed will be going down in FY25, at least on that account. So employee benefits is budgeted at $2,174,375. That's a decrease of $29,124 or 1.32%. I had mentioned under budgeting the health insurance earlier. So we're seeing savings there. We also have a reduction in our New Hampshire retirement system employer contribution percentage, and those were offset by the actual GMR increase of 5.8% and the increased dental insurance and FICA costs. So we under budgeted the health insurance, but we still have in mind that there could be a potential 5.8% increase for next year. Our interfund transfer is budgeted at $30,000. That reflects no change. So all these accounts that I just went through represent the general fund. Then we have a food service fund. The food service fund is a standalone fund that is intended to be self-sustaining via revenue through the National School Lunch Program, our free and reduced population reimbursement, as well as student and staff payment of lunch and breakfast or food items. So if a food service fund runs a deficit, the general fund is legally obligated to pay that deficit. So the interfund transfer is that payment from the general fund to cover the deficit in the food service fund. For a school or a district like Northampton, which has a very low free and reduced population, it is very normal to run a deficit. It's very similar to some of our other SAU 21 schools and other similar school districts across the state. So the food service budget is $204,156,000, which is an increase of $10,792 or 5.58%. So that reflects some pretty substantial inflationary factors to our food. I mean, we've all seen it. I mean, I'm appalled every time I go to the grocery store. And unfortunately, even though we're part of buyers groups and we do have some economies of scale when it comes to food purchases. We are seeing those increases as well as the supplies that are required in the kitchen. Additionally, this includes the salary staff cost of living adjustment as well as steps. So that brings us to the default budget. I had talked about the default budget earlier. It's $9,689,510. Again, that's $84,151 less than the proposed operating budget of $9,773,661. So those are the two numbers that will be on the warrants that you'll see at ballot come March 14th. And I'm sure everyone is happy, but for my end.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, any comments or questions in relation to the budget?
The out-of-district.
I just need you to state your name
Yes, thank you.
and show us your card. Thanks.
Anne Marie Banfield, 7 Highlander Drive. The out-of-district tuition amount that was up there, how many students does that represent, and what is the total for those students? And then what schools charge that tuition, if you don't mind? Just curious.
Right. So we can't provide specific details.
Yeah, I'm not asking for personal information, I just.
Right, well, that would
yeah.
include like the placements. But I can give
The
you,
the schools, I've looked at that before.
yeah, so that is 2 placements for a total of $280,136.
The only reason I ask about the schools is I'm curious as to what kind of education for 2 students is costs us $280,000. Is this, behavioral?
Yes.
Is this?
Yeah, so we really can't go into the actual services, but that can vary dramatically depending on whether it's medical
So you can't provide the
needs.
names of the two schools or one school? Because I'm not looking for personal information at all.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is you're asking about why it would cost so much. The actual schools are Monarch, sorry, Monarch. That's the school. I'm hesitant to go into the
Sure.
because there's related services. I don't want to go down that road.
No, and I don't want it to ever become personal because I respect that privacy.
So to put it in perspective, I mean, for everyone's edification, out-of-district placements can be extremely pricey. It can be a day program, it can be a residential program. At Winnicott, we had one year where we had 2 out-of-district placements in excess of $500,000. On the flip side, you can have day programs that are under $100,000. In this case, both are over $100,000, as I just mentioned.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
Anne Marie, can we see if anyone else has questions before you ask additional
Before I
questions?
ask additional ones, sure.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, that's fine, too. Go ahead, Anne
I
Marie.
just have a couple more.
Monarch's pretty generous.
Is the check registry available on the district website by any chance?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Is
you.
is the check registry on the website for the district so anybody can go in and see what expenditures are being paid every month?
That is not.
Okay. Gentlemen from the Budget Committee, Bedford posts their check registry online every month, so you can go see who's getting what money.
Anne Marie,
every
we
month.
really have to stick
Okay.
to conversation
Okay.
about this budget.
It would be helpful if that was, it cuts down on right-to-know requests. It increases transparency. And then the last couple questions I had. the guidance counselor you had at $82,732. Is that one guidance counselor at that rate?
Correct.
Okay. And then health you had at $80,380. Is that one nurse?
Correct.
Okay. And then what do these individuals do during the summer?
Sorry, can I make a correction? Didn't you say that it was not only the salary of the nurse, but the supplies? No. Okay.
There is supplies.
Because
and,
there was a supply increase, specifically EpiPens, things like that, in that line budget item.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
slight, I mean, it's, so yes.
So
I
it's
can-
slightly lower
Okay.
than
Right, it's a
that.
I just
couple
wanted to make
$1,000
that
as a supplies.
clarification.
Okay. Do these individuals work full-time during the summer?
So they fall under the collective bargaining agreement, so they have a 187-day contract.
Okay. Okay, because it just seems like when you have 3 months off, it just seems like a high salary. And by the way, I'm a mother of a nurse, so I'm very respectful and very appreciative of what they do, but these salaries just seem a little high, given the number of days that they work.
So they're members of the collective bargaining agreement, so
Okay.
so it's collectively bargained.
All right. And then the only other thing I guess I would bring up when the article comes up, because it hasn't been discussed yet, so should I wait? I have
Yeah,
one more
we need
question.
to wait to other articles.
And then just to address your original question, it's actually $73,009 for the nurse.
Okay.
So, sorry about
That's
that.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions in relation to the budget? Thanks.
Tim Faley, 3 North Road. I don't like talking in front of people, so I'm going to try to be quick. I know you said that the state of New Hampshire said we pay 3% less in retirement, the employer has to contribute. Is that what you said? Where did that money go? Does the employee then get 3% less on their retirement?
No, so that was actually a piece of legislature, and it was a one-time, there's a one-time refund, and then they reduced the employer contribution. So the employee is still paying in the same amount. The employer is just paying that 3% less. Now, that doesn't affect the benefits that the employee receives when they retire. However, they have actuaries at the New Hampshire retirement system that calculates what is required as far as contributions, and then they act accordingly. I will note that it's my understanding that the New Hampshire retirement system does have an unfunded pension obligation. So that's longstanding, like 30 years. So I would not be surprised if at some point that contribution rate increases. There could also be, I'm speculating right now, but there could also be changes. There could be legislation that would change benefits, but none of that's occurred yet.
So I guess the hard part for me to understand is there's 3% less going into a retirement. If I put 3% less into a private retirement, the yield is going to be less in the end.
Yeah, so it's a little different because it's a defined pension program, so it does not affect the benefit.
Okay.
And it's not, and the employee is still contributing the same amount, it's just the employer is contributing less.
Okay.
And there's a board of, the New Hampshire retirement system has a board that determines those rates, and then, or the legislature can step in and dictate that. So.
Can I keep going, or?
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anyone else looking to ask a question, so go ahead, Tim.
Employee benefits, your budget, in it says the reductions were offset by increases to health insurance premiums and increased dental insurance and FICA costs. Who pays the premiums? Who pays the dental insurance and FICA costs? Is that employees?
So that's the employer cost. So FICA is like the Social Security contribution, as well as Medicare contribution. The dental insurance, employees are offered a dental plan. The employee has a contribution and the employer has a contribution. This is the employer contribution.
Okay. So all those contributions, the premium, all that's employer.
That's all employer. So everything in the budget is what we as a the employer pays. Nothing in the budget reflects what the employee pays.
Okay. And then final, this is a really information. I appreciate this. There's like 7 times in this that we discuss cost of living allowance.
Well, there's a lot of accounts that have employees, like
Yeah.
salaries,
Yeah,
so
no,
it's,
that's not the question
Yeah.
I have. The cost of living would be basically determined by your inflation.
that's how we determine it, yes.
Okay. So we see that there's inflation, there's issues with inflation in probably 5 or 6 of our budget items here. And we see that, for example, it says SAU non-union staff salary cost of living, COLA benchmark to inflation. That's what we were just talking about.
Yep.
When you look at your general education, you decrease the budget by 1.23. And inflation and teacher salaries is in that portion, correct?
So teacher salaries are in that portion, but teacher cost of living adjustment and steps are
Oh,
not.
that's
It's in a
CBA.
separate
I know that.
CBA,
That's
yep.
what I'm getting at. I'm just saying that the teacher salary is in that portion of the budget, right?
Correct. Most
So-
of them. Anne Marie had mentioned like the guidance, health, those
Yep.
are out.
Yep.
Speech is out. I don't think any other ones
Yeah,
are.
and a lot of those fall under the second union negotiation, or will go to an admin. So I understand that. I see that there's inflation issues, and cost of living should counter effect that. It should help the employees that we have here. I notice that your school administration raised their budget 6.51%, and a lot of that's due to cost of living and rental lease equipment subjugated that. It crossed that out. So I guess my question is, why are we giving a 7% cost of living adjustment to administration, and we're giving a 5% cost of living adjustment to teachers?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's because it's 2 separate employee classifications. So teachers fall under the collective bargaining agreement, and that agreement with a proposed cost of living adjustment needs to be bargained for and then go to ballot and approved by all 5 of our districts. So, you know, there's pros and cons to being part of a collectively bargained unit, right? So you have protections for being part of a union, employee protections. You also have some, you know, protections as far as like termination. There's certain discipline. Regardless, some benefits there. However, they sacrifice a little bit because you have to bargain for a number of years out too. So there's projecting what an appropriate cost of living adjustment is in the future. It also needs to be approved at ballot, and that's a challenge. So the bargaining teams need to come together and determine what a fair cost of living adjustment is that both sides feel can get passed at ballot. And that's not occurred here at SAU 21. It's failed 3 times since 2010. So would I like to benchmark teachers to CPI? Absolutely. And I agree. I'd love I'm pro teacher, obviously. But it's just in reality, there's always going to be a differential. My long-winded response is always going to be a differential with a union employee classification and a non-union employee classification. Ironically, when you look at the last 4 years, the previous CBA, so the teachers were at 2.75% for the last 4 years, every year. And we've been benchmarked to inflation, and it just so happens that it was within like a 0.1 percentage when you look at those 4 years, or 5 years. I forget what time frame I looked at, and so ultimately, like, the hope is that it'll be similar, but it's never going to be the same.
So if we don't vote for this operating budget, does that mean that admin doesn't get the cost of living allowance increased?
It doesn't mean that. It could result in that. So if the residents vote down the operating budget, it goes to default budget, and that's $83,000 less than what we're proposing. So at that point, the school board would have that discretion to allocate resources and develop a new budget. So they would decide what they would reduce by $83,000. So that could potentially be cost of living adjustment. That could be any number of accounts.
So what that appears is that the contract with teachers was negotiated much harder than the contract with administration. That's how that appears.
Well, it's not. It's not a contract. So
Correct. I know.
So-
There was no contract negotiated with administration. I understand that.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions in regards to the budget? Okay, seeing no further questions with the budget, Article 1 will be placed on the official ballot as written.
I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 1.
Second.
All those in favor of restricting reconsideration on Article 1? Anyone opposed? Oh, so that means we won't be able to go back and talk about the budget again throughout the rest of the meeting. That's okay. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to Article 2, the collective bargaining agreement. Matt, can you explain even though you started a little bit, can you explain the collective bargaining agreement?
I will talk about the CBA all day. I would also encourage.
Please, Matt, no, no.
I promise, this will be shorter than the operating budget. So.
There's a big space there.
Yeah, there it is.
So the CBA for our teachers' contract really is, from the administration and the school board's perspective, the top priority. I mean, I agree with Mr. Fraley 100%. We need to provide competitive compensation for our teachers. And it really is one of the strongest determinants of an essential ingredient for success at our schools. CBAs, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll just repeat myself slightly, are particularly difficult to gain voter approval in SAU 21. So with our cooperative structure, if the CBA fails in any one ballot, it fails for all our districts. So hypothetically, if it fails here at Northampton, it fails for our teachers at Winnacunnet, our teachers at Hampton Falls, our teachers at Seabrook, and Southampton. So this is regardless of individual ballot outcome in each individual district. So one town or district could, in effect, fail the CBA for all the other towns. So that idiosyncrasy really has wreaked havoc in passing CBAs. I had mentioned earlier it's failed 3 times since 2010. And this really does negatively affect our school districts, and it affects the retention and the hiring of our teachers. And I mean, simply put, our teachers are amazing. We have amazing teachers here at SAU 21 and specifically at Northampton. They're in the classrooms every day. They're working with our students, providing individualized and personalized instruction. They do incredible work. They're providing hands-on learning opportunities, educational experiences, and our teachers are really what makes our schools great. I had mentioned MTSS earlier, and they, our Northampton teachers excel at challenging our advanced students and providing those supports and those interventions for our students that may be struggling. And that's not only academically, that's social emotionally. And that is incredibly important. That was important pre-pandemic. It's all the more important post-pandemic. So I will say we are truly fortunate to have the tremendous faculty who we have here employed at Northampton. So as such, it's just really important that we provide competitive compensation relative to some of our comparable SAUs and districts here in the Seacoast region. So, we compare the CBAs for here at SAU 21 versus the districts that we're competing with for teachers. So that includes SAU 16, so Exeter, Kensington, Rye, Portsmouth, Oyster River, all the surrounding districts. And on average, we pay our teachers about $5,000 to $6,000 less than those comparable Seacoast schools. We also pay, or we also offer less generous benefits packages. That in and of itself isn't going to make a teacher leave our district. $5,000 isn't going to be that impetus. However, it becomes problematic if this contract fails, because should it fail, that wage gap widens. Most of those SAUs that I just referenced already have CBAs in place for the next couple of years, so they're in effect. A failed contract here in SAU 21 means that our teachers receive no step increase and they receive no cost of living adjustment. So that wage gap goes from $5,000 to $6,000 closer to $9,000 to $10,000. Plus, they receive a step increase, because if you leave SAU 21 and go to a competing school district, you gain back that step, whereas you lost it here at SAU 21. It just goes into the ether. So because when you go to a new district, it's based on years of experience, it's not based on a contract failing in a district. So at that pay differential, we will absolutely lose teachers. We've seen it when contracts have failed in past years. So that is a grave concern, SAU-wide, but specifically here at Northampton. Additionally, it's not just that local competition that we're dealing with. We are combating national, state, and local trends when it comes to teacher applicant pools. Public education is no longer attractive. It's not an attractive profession. Nationally, the number of college students pursuing a traditional education program has decreased by a full third. We're seeing the same issues here on the Seacoast. UNH, we had UNH students pursuing an undergraduate degree in education, dropping from 103 students in 2010 to 32 students in 2022. For UNH students pursuing a master's degree in education, we had 250 students in 2010, 116 in 2022. That's dramatic. That is very concerning. So this has a direct correlation to qualified candidates here at Northampton. We've already seen it. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen a 60% decline in applicants. Now, that's a 60% decline, but we've still been able to find some great teachers. But that's worrisome going forward, particularly if we're not able to compete compensation-wise. So in addition to that decline in college students who are entering the profession, we've also seen a pretty dramatic exodus of teachers leaving the field of education. So it's really a double whammy. Here at SAU 21, we have had 15 teachers leave over the last 2 years. And that's reasons not attributable to like natural attrition or retirement. That's leaving the profession. That's, on average, teachers are paid 23.5% less than college graduates with comparable degrees in other professions. Simply put, teachers can get paid more in different professions, and they're doing it. They're leaving. So I don't think I'm telling anyone in this room anything that they don't already know. We've all seen the headlines. We've all seen the research. But I just want to emphasize just how incredibly important it is that we provide competitive compensation so that we can keep the amazing teachers we have and provide us the opportunity to attract new high-quality teachers in the future. And this CBA will at least help us in that goal. It's still going to be a challenge as I foresee going out, but that is the intent and the justification for this CBA. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And to make things official, Mike, can I just have a motion to move
Yes.
to the floor before we have questions?
I move to open the article for discussion.
In a second? Okay. Any comments or questions on this? Thanks, Tim.
Still 3 North Road, everybody. I just wanted to reiterate, 5% is the cost of living we're giving teachers this year, which is 2% less than our inflation rate, which is basically us saying we're willing to make you pay 2% less, or we're willing to pay you 2% less to teach our kids. So that's where we're at. Right?
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Article 2, collective bargaining agreement, will move to the official ballot as written. Moving to Article 3, do I have a motion for Article 3?
Can we restrict reconsideration?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 2.
Second? Second. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Now moving on to Article 3.
I'd like to move Article 3, consideration.
And a second?
I second.
Okay. Matt, will you speak to the school resource officer?
Thank you. You can go. No. So, one more. Thank you. So, so the Northampton School District is proposing to raise and appropriate the sum of $115,000 for the purpose of a school resource officer to serve the Northampton School in a full-time capacity. So the proposed school resource officer role will, in fact, be a Northampton Police Department employee. However, they'll be fully integrated into the school community, and they will be responsible, but not limited to, I'm just giving a couple bullets, for a number of responsibilities. That includes promoting a positive relationship between students and law enforcement officials, fostering educational programs and activities to increase each student's knowledge of and respect for the law and the function of law enforcement, providing a safe, healthy, and secure environment on campus and in the immediate proximity of the campus, as well as assist in the development of a safe school plan and crisis preparedness guidelines for the school. I also want to note that we are budgeting, or we were asking for $115,000. However, that is not going to be the amount that will be expended. So $115,000 represents roughly the midpoint on the salary scale for Northampton police officer. When I say salary scale, I'm not saying that they're paid $115,000. That's total compensation, so that includes benefit, health insurance, and all benefits. It's roughly between I think it's like 80 and 135,000 all in. So because this is not yet approved and we haven't hired an employee, we need to estimate a certain amount of funds that we are appropriating. Should the amount come in less than $115,000, that would be returned to the unreserved fund balance to offset tax assessment for the community. Should it come in higher than $115,000, that balance, we would have to find funds out of the operating budget and recognize savings elsewhere. So I just want to make that clear, that $115,000 is an estimate, and the exact amount will be determined at a later date. So this is year one. We will, if this is approved, there would be a memorandum of understanding that we would contract with the town of Northampton and the police department. There would be some type of cost share in future years, as well as a delineation of the SRO's responsibilities and job duties. I'll also note that this is for the school year. There is school vacations and summer vacations where that this employee would act in the capacity of the police department in however Chief Moen deemed necessary. But that would be determined through that hiring process as far as exact responsibilities. Thank you.
Okay, comments or questions in relation to the resource officer? Come on up to the microphone.
Okay, I'd just like some clarification on this one. So is the town of Hampton also paying the resource police as a police officer? Or is this just going to be paid out of the school budget?
So this, year
Yep.
one, is being paid by this warrant article.
This warrant article, that's what I meant, yeah.
So entirely the school budget, if by chance it's higher than 115, it would be coming out of the school's operating budget. However, in future years, there'll be some type of cost share between the town of Northampton and the school district.
Okay, and so for the school, will the resource officer only be working the 9 months? What do they do during summer breaks?
Yeah, so that would be determined by the police department, so Chief Moen would determine those responsibilities.
So I just looked, and the average salary for the Manchester police is $83,000, and they're on the streets, they're dealing with drug addicts, they're dealing with a lot of things.
Anne Marie, this
Very
is a
different.
conversation, though, about Northampton.
Right,
This-
but my point, though, is I see what you put up there, what they'll be doing, and while I completely respect that, it just seems like a really high price for that particular position.
So that's just
Okay.
that's just a couple bullets of their full job description. The job description hasn't been determined because that comes after it's approved. But it's very important to note that is not the salary. That's total
Okay.
compensation.
Okay.
So the $83,000 is purely salary that you're
Okay.
seeing in Manchester. That includes health insurance, which is extremely expensive, dental insurance, FICA, all those benefits.
Sure.
Retirement, New Hampshire retirement system, which is 20% right
Yeah.
there.
I think just the taxpayers would like to know, would like to see that, would like to feel like that's justified, whatever that ends up being in terms of what their job description is and then the amount. I know that other school districts have shared resource officers amongst schools. Is that something that was considered so that you share also the cost with the other districts? For instance, maybe, they're at the school so many days, and then they're at another school so many days, and then that way the cost is shared.
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult. I mean, so that is a model that sometimes works in a larger city or town with multiple schools. However, at Northampton, that becomes problematic because there's one police department, one school. We'd be sharing with a different town, so it'd actually be a sharing with, Hampton Falls Police Department.
Right.
And Hampton Falls School District and Northampton School District. It's not ideal, and in that case, you're essentially getting a half-time SRO. And I know there's been strong support by both the school board and community members for a full-time SRO. And
Okay.
so-
All right, thank you.
Come on up.
Brian Belanger, Spruce Meadow Drive, my card. I just want to commend the board and the town for putting this forward. I know that almost 500 of the most important people in the world are in this building every day, and so I want to commend you for putting a full-time police officer in the building and not a part-time person. I think it's, I'd hate to say 3 days a week is important and 2 days a week is not important, regardless of the pay. The most important people in my world are in this building every day, and I'd love to see a police officer every day, not just for morning drop-off and pickup. So I want to thank you for doing this.
Other questions or comments?
Is there a timeline on that? I guess my first question would be, has Northampton ever had a resource officer before?
It's my understanding that there has been a resource officer before my time. We currently have a very part-time SRO in place. As far as timeline goes, our hope, so we will learn whether this is approved after March 14th, and then we would start the whole MOU process and then hiring process shortly thereafter. But it can be a lengthy time frame to go through that, to get a SRO trained and up and running. We would love to have this individual start in fall. However, that's dependent upon the hiring process.
So, I misstated the question, but I was wondering if we had one before, and I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah.
I want to know why we got away from that, and I want to know the timeline for, are we going to have to vote on this school board or this resource officer every year? Or is this something that, like, hey, he's in and we're good with him for?
So I can't speak about why the SRO was eliminated at some point in the past, so my apologies. It was quite some time ago, as I recall. However, going forward, this would not be an annual warrant article. This would be a position that'd be part of the Northampton School District budget and the Northampton Police Department budget. It would actually be in the Northampton. It would reside in the Northampton Police Department budget, and then we'd be paying them. It would be like a contracted services that we'd be paying them.
So it'd be a permanent.
So it'd be in the budget every year, I guess,
Okay.
is the bottom line.
I guess I just don't want to go 3 years and do away with it, you know.
Now,
the people.
that does not preclude the possibility that during the budget process,
Somebody
a
votes.
select board or school board decides to eliminate the position, but from a practical warrant article perspective, it'll roll into the operating budget. It will not be a warrant article every year. That will be voted on every year.
And I think, hold on, I think, James, you have an answer to why we no longer have one?
Yep, James Sununu, Evergreen Drive. I had previously been on the school board starting in 2014, and since my time here in town in 2012, there was not a school resource officer. My understanding, and if I'm incorrect, someone please correct me, but my understanding was in the past, the school resource officer was just sort of a temporary assignment from an existing police officer, where the police department had someone who they could assign to the school and was here on a part-time basis, but it wasn't, that role wasn't designated as that specific job. And as the department got busier over time, and as the town grew, there was less availability to assign an officer to sort of fulfill that role on a part-time basis. So that's why there wasn't. So there's never been a designated SRO for the school as a specific job. It was just as resources allowed, they had officers at the school. So it was not a specific position in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Have we explored any, like, private entities instead of going through the police department, having like a security guard or something like that?
No, we have not.
No? Any funding for private stuff? It's just, we've only looked at resource officer through the police department. Is there, and why is that? Do we know?
I mean, it's our preference to have a legitimate
Sure.
police officer
Yeah,
in the
just
school.
vetting.
However, should this fail, then it's certainly something we could explore in the future.
Sure. And final one, who are the 2 budget committees that did not vote for that? And why?
The 2 members that are not here tonight, Brian Good and Lisa Gallagher, who has COVID,
Okay.
are not here tonight. They are the ones that voted against it. Why they did that, I don't know.
Do we know what meeting? Because we can go back and look at the meetings on,
The meeting was in late December when we were looking at the warrant articles for the school. So it's probably
But I don't think they,
December,
Yeah, 19.
December 19th.
December 19th.
I don't think they voiced why they voted no. If that's your
No.
intent to go back, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions in relation to the resource officer?
She said she didn't think it was necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Donna Mackay, 11 Deer Run Road. I think the last resource officer, just for everybody's information that was here, was Mike Olivera. And the police program was called DARE, and the kids were really excited about it. Mike is an alumni of Northampton School, same graduating class as Lisa. And I just thought I'd give you a little bit of history.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Tim, you can come on up. Come to the microphone because it gets recorded on Channel 22 too.
If this doesn't pass on the budget committee, or if it's not voted for, can it be privately paid for by a donor?
So so next year, if this fails at warrant article, we will be precluded from funding a resource officer in any other manner
Next year.
because there's a no mean no law. However, the following year, I guess theoretically, if private citizens came forth with a donation, the school board or the police department, whoever received that donation, could then look to hire a SRO.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Madam Moderator,
Oh, sorry.
if I
Rick.
may.
Go ahead.
Just to add to your observation, if it doesn't get funded or approved, then no means no. Under state law, if it's voted down, you cannot do it.
Donna, 11 Deer Run Road. I just wanted to mention, if everybody's really passionate about this happening, a good resource is the Hampton Union or the Seacoast Papers. You can write articles, letters to the editor. You can call everybody you know.
That applies to
I
the
just thought I'd
CBA
mention
as
that. It's
well.
applied.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions in relation to this article? Okay, Article 3 will move to the official ballot as written.
I move to restrict consideration of Article 3.
I'll second.
All those in favor of restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to Article 4, the long-term maintenance. Can we have a motion to move this to the floor?
I'll make a motion to move this article for discussion.
I second.
Matt?
Thank you. The district does issue an annual long-term maintenance warrant article, and the intent is to address building maintenance and repair projects at the school. So this year's proposed LTM warrant article is $75,000, and it does align with the 5-year capital improvement plan. The project we're looking to address include, but not limited to, 2 projects. So the first is the replacement of the gymnasium exterior entry doors. Those doors have experienced some significant deterioration. That's due to wear and tear from usage as well as weather. And that closing and locking functionality is, to put it mildly, not reliable. We have been expending costs to repair those set of doors on an annual basis. The cost of that project is approximately $20,000. Additionally, we are looking to repair and replace sections of the playground rubber surface areas. This project was originally scheduled for 2020, 2021, but that was deferred, both for financial considerations, but also we monitor, we estimate the lifespan of various projects such as the rubber surface, and we felt we had a little extra life in it. but there is some substantial damage and wear that we do need to replace at this time. And the cost of that project is $55,000. Thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions in relation to this article? Okay, seeing no comments or questions, Article 4 will move to the official ballot as presented.
I'll move to open the article for discussion.
Wait, no.
Oh, sorry.
You're ready to
I'll move
restrict reconsideration.
consideration for Article 4.
Okay. Okay, moving on to Article 5, Building Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund. Do we have a motion to move that one to the floor?
I do now. I move to open the article for discussion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, Matt?
Thank you. So the Building Maintenance Expendable Trust, we are planning to we are proposing, to contribute $50,000 via unreserved fund balance. So the plan is to utilize the Building Maintenance Expendable Trust to fund the replacement of glycol in our building's HVAC system. And that also includes the disposal of the old glycol. So for those of you who may not know what glycol is, which admittedly I didn't necessarily know before encountering this project, it's essentially antifreeze that goes into our heating system so pipes don't freeze. This past weekend is a great example where that glycol clearly worked, because boy, we have an entire wing at Hampton Falls that is flooded and is unusable for the next 3 months. And Winnicott also experienced burst pipes, which took out of commission a classroom and storage facility. So it is, it's all the more important now that I've gone through that. The projected total cost is a lot for antifreeze. It's $90,000. I'm minimizing it, obviously. It's a different scale. However, we are proposing to contribute that $50,000 to help replenish the trust, and that will help us to maintain an appropriate balance in the trust after spending the $90,000 on glycol, in order to safeguard the school against any unforeseen building and maintenance issues that we may encounter. I'll also note that the current balance in that trust is $130,168. Thank you.
Any comments or questions in relationship to Article 5? Okay, seeing no comments or questions in relation to Article 5 will move to the ballot as presented.
I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 5.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to Article 6. Can we have a motion for that?
I move to open the article for discussion.
Second? Matt?
Thank you. So, sorry in advance. This could be as long as the operating budget.
It will not be as long as the operating budget, Matt.
All right, slightly shorter. So,
It's the Matt Show.
so the FY '23 budget did include a plan to expend the remaining $15,000 that we had in the the technology expendable trust. And we had indicated at that time, last year, during this session, that we intended to then close the fund after we expended those funds, which then goes on the warrant article to discontinue that trust going forward. The reason that we do not need this trust is because we have since instituted that technology plan that I had mentioned earlier with replacement cycles and to meet the technology needs of the school, whereas this was originally instituted to pay for some of those technology needs at one point in time. So that is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any comments or questions on this?
Same person.
Tim, I know, we know. It's good.
Just so everybody knows, off topic, I plow for the town of Ryan. There's snow outside and the roads are getting icy, so careful on your way home. I notice all the other articles have monetary values attached to them, and this doesn't. Why isn't there a monetary value attached to that?
Good question, because, so in this case, this is a non-monetary warrant article. We're not appropriating funds. We're actually discontinuing this expendable trust, and the remaining balance will be returned to the town to offset tax assessment. So we're not asking for money, we're actually giving the money back. When I say giving the money back, we're talking like a couple, like
That's
$100.
going in the technology fund, is what you're saying?
No, so this technology trust has disappeared, so we're proposing to get rid of it. And
Yeah,
that-
where's it going is what I was asking.
So it goes into the unreserved fund balance that will go to offset tax assessment.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this article? Okay, Article 6 will move to the ballot, official ballot as presented.
Move to restrict reconsideration of Article 6.
I second.
All those in favor of restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion has passed. That's about it. So this meeting is now officially closed. I will say, remember, voting day is March 14th, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the school gym, so make sure you're all there. And thank you very much for coming out tonight, and drive safely, since Tim has said it's getting icy out there.